So welcome to this edition of Hubbard-Hall Seen Solved. I'm Tim Pennington, editor of finishgamecoding.com. And today we welcome in Scott Papst, who's the Vice President of Specialty Sales and Business Development at Hubbard-Hall. Scott, welcome for joining us today.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for having me.
This is Seen and Solved with host Tim Pennington, brought to you by Hubbard-Hall. Better results, less chemistry.
Let's start off first. Let's let people know a little bit about your background. Why don't you give us a little thumbnail? Then I want to talk about specialty sales, what those all are, and how the world business development is going. So tell us a little bit about your background a little bit.
Great. Well, I've been with Hubbard-Hall for over 30 years. Started with a company Hubbard-Hall acquired called Mitchell Bradford back in '91. And throughout my career, I started out in technical service. Went to leading our technical service team for a decade or so, moved into the business development arena. One of the key initiatives, we started up our own with our unused capacity. We started offering toll blending services for some of our strategic partners. And we do that today, and that's been quite a success. And then in the past decade, I more moved into the area of sales management. And now I am the VP of Specialty Sales and Business Development, where I really oversee and work with both our business development team and our technical team to really, identify and meet the needs of our customers.
Right. So when you talk specialty sales, give us that worldview. What is that of? What type of things are you working on with that?
Well, in the world of Hubbard-Hall, we have kind of like two halves of our business. The older original part of the business is more commodity distribution oriented in the New England region of the United States, where we're buying in bulk, packing down, and supplying a la carte menu to the customers. But on what we call our specialty is where we actually compound with these ingredients and formulate chemistries that can help companies, in their really fabricated metal market, meet their needs.
Gotcha. And I know business development, you guys have some partnerships going on with some other entities, but really I guess it's always kind of looking for opportunities, who you can work with, and also, customers that you can bring on, correct?
Correct. The business development is, of course, every day we're meeting our customer needs. We're making products, delivering it, on a timely fashion when they need it. But part of the business development is getting out into the marketplace, trying to identify needs that aren't being met or being underserved, and then bringing it back to the team and seeing how can we, develop something to meet those unfulfilled needs.
Right. Talking about getting products to customers, let's talk a little bit about supply chain, and not specifically what you all are doing, but I'm sure you're talking to a lot of other people in industries and manufacturing. This was a very big hit for everybody in supply chain. I mean, and we'll get to that a little bit because you all weren't really impacted as much as others. You seem to forecast that, but let's talk in general about supply chain. What are you hearing as far as when things may get back to normal, or are they going to get a little bit worse? What do you think?
Well, I guess, reading the tea leaves, reading all the people, the blogs, and listening to, the other people that know a little more than I do. But what I'm seeing, feeling, and the reality of, it's a world marketplace. And, we have the Russia-Ukraine situation, which is, adding to the complexity. There's been a little bit of softening in the pain coming into the summer, but it's still, demand is uniquely high on durable goods. It's still well above the trend line prior to COVID. And I think that's what caught everybody by surprise. We thought coming out of COVID, everybody would start spending their money on services, and, everybody would stop going to the Lowe's, Home Depot, and doing the home projects. But they're still doing it at, above pre-COVID levels. So right now there's, a little bit of a softening. You see the gas prices down a little bit at the pumps, but I think it is a summer lull. As long as we have the situation in Europe going on, at least a lot of the chemistries that we use, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on some of the raw materials, but natural gas is a key component to chemicals, and Russia is a big supplier of that. And so as long as that is kind of being restricted going into the winter, if it's still going on, things could get quite a bit tighter again.
Right. So let's talk specifically about what you all did, because like I said, this hit a lot of companies hard, a lot of suppliers hard. I know in talking to some finishers out there, asking them what were they doing to kind of overcome some of the supply chain. And they said, well, we find another supplier. I mean, we have to, if that's what we need to do. So specifically to Hubbard-Hall, what did you all do in advance or try to do? Or, what was it that you all kind of had put together that really it wasn't so dramatic for you all, wasn't so harmful to some of your customers that you couldn't get the materials? The raw materials you could pretty much get, it seemed like.
Well, it took a lot of work, and a little backstory on it. Just like everybody, pricing tightness started like a year ago. Seeing the sharp increases, slowly the supply became an issue, and I just recall leaving at Christmas. Taking a little time off, thinking, the worst was probably behind us because it was such a great increase in pricing last fall, only to come back on the first of the year and see all these price increases and all these letters from suppliers saying we're out of material, we don't. So it was just like eye-opening. It was somewhat depressing.
Right.
But what we did was immediately saw that, the way we had done business for the prior 5 years, where supply and pricing was relatively flat, we really increased the communication internally. So no longer is it just procurement working with the supply chain. It's bringing in all our product managers who know, about the raw materials, what alternatives are available, and then, communicating to them on a more timely manner that, hey, there could be an issue, or there's going to be a plant shutdown on a raw material coming up. What do we need to do to, be prepared for that? So we have this weekly team meeting with procurement, all the product managers, sales is represented, because the demands of our customers, do we need more or less? Getting that in a timely manner allows us to do better planning. And even by doing this, we've identified, risks, and we've been sourcing on a worldwide basis, what means is what may be short in the United States, maybe more plentiful in South America or somewhere else. So we are buying material, at a premium to assure our customer supply. We'll bring that in. So it's really this pre-planning, this really committed effort by the team that's really paying dividends.
Right. It's funny in this whole thing. What sort of advice would you have given, or would you give right now shops that are asking about, preparing for supply chain issues? I guess part of it is find a supplier who's got the materials that can get it to you.
Right,
first,
but even with your current supplier, because it is change in demand, communicating that.
Right.
If your business is doing well and you're going to change, you see yourself using more of a certain raw material, the earlier you communicate that to your supplier, the better. Because one of the things that's been painful, and we had is when there is a limited supply from a producer, or when a decrease in the market, many of these producers declare force majeure, and then they'll allocate you based on last year's purchases. So if you're anticipating a 50% increase in need, well, you're only getting half of what you got last year. So yes, communication and then broadening your supply chain is what you need to be doing.
Right.
So it does become strategic.
Right. And like I said, had you ever seen it hit that fast though? I mean that's kind of had everybody's head spinning. The shortage was one thing, but the quickness of it, it seemed like.
In the broadness of it. In the past, it's not often, but let's say once a decade, we'll see pieces of this, but you only see that sector. Like right now, may have seen in the news, the whole worldwide fertilizer market is very tight. Well, this happened a decade ago where prices doubled, tripled within a year like they have the past year. But within 12 months, it quickly retreated. And right now, we don't see that. we see the rate of increase stabilizing and slowing down, but I'm not seeing many of these raw materials, expecting them to be rolled back 12 months anytime soon.
Right. So let's just repeat that. I mean, it's the advice you had is that if you're a shop and you're expecting you're going to need some materials, if you're maybe an increase, it's best to communicate, let people know as soon as possible, because the lead times may be, like you said, a little bit longer, but at least you'll be in that channel of knowing that telling a supplier you need the materials and when you're going to possibly need them. So that's always, I guess, like you said, communication is key.
It is the key. And, and in the past 6 months, year, everyone's seen on the news the container ships sitting off of California or sitting off the coast, because there's just so much backlog out there and demand is so high. Yes, everything takes longer than it did pre-COVID.
Right. So let's switch to cost now. Let's talk about the term, near term pricing. Explain to me what that is, and what applicators and those type of what they should be knowing about what that whole phrasing and what that means.
Yeah, I'll take it back to natural gas. I think that really explains it, because natural gas is the building block for so many chemistries: ammonia, nitrogen compounds. And if we go back from, let's say 5 years ago until early 2021, the price of natural gas in US dollars in Europe and North America was fairly on par. We're a little bit sub $5 a million BTUs. And then, last summer, things started spiking in Europe. Cost by later in the year went up here in North America, where, natural gas right now, we're at, I think just yesterday, about $9.46 per million BTUs. But in Europe, we're over $30.
Wow.
So again, pre-COVID, we were on par. Well, what that's doing is that, again, is the building block for ammonia, which is the building block for other chemistries. Well, because of the price being that high, the European ammonia plants can't compete with a North America producer of chemicals that's based off ammonia. So they have a choice: either produce and lose money or shut down. Well, they're idling these plants.
Right.
So it's not because demand isn't there they're idling; they just can't compete on price. And the cause of this situation is the Russia-Ukraine situation, because all the natural gas pretty much being consumed by Russia. Europe, majority is coming from Russia. So that we can't control, but that is leading to increased ammonia prices, which then increase your nitrogen, your fertilizer prices, which is a lot of the base stocks for what we are compounding finished goods with.
Right. And so how does that affect end users, applicators? I mean, is it in terms of, like I said, the near term pricing, how does it affect them, or what should they be knowing?
Well, they need to know it is a broad market. It's not just a producer trying to fatten their margin or their chemical supplier. It is a supply based situation. So that they do need to change their budgets. It's costing more, and I know it is costing pain. I've talked to some customers. I do spend a lot of time, more than ever, trying to educate them and give them the information so they could predict the effect on their goods that they're manufacturing. But in some of them, in some of the automotive industries, it's hard for them to get their customers to pay more, and they're always being squeezed. Yet these costs are real, and so it's having the information to educate, I think, is important for our customers to go to their customer, because they do need to get more for their goods.
Right, exactly, with that. So now we've kind of depressed our listeners by telling them, they may not get products, and it may be a little bit more expensive for that. But let's take a different tenure, because one thing that Hubbard-Hall has talked about, and I've actually seen it and explained to me, and I get it, is, even though you all are a chemical company, one of the things that you're trying to tell people is you may not need to use as much chemicals. So in a broad sense, explain what that means, because like I said, I've seen some good examples, but I'll let you talk about it. Of you may not need to use as much chemicals.
Correct. And it is a big shift from a corporate, viewpoint. Is, traditionally, we're trying to sell volume. That is, where we make our money, moving goods, whether we're blending them or doing them as the commodity distribution, moving them through, repackaging and supplying them. But it's realizing, we in trying to meet the needs of our customers, that approach is not the way to go long term. Many of the chemistries that we sell, we do it on the specialty side. A lot of our chemicals are for surface preparation, cleaning, which isn't necessarily a value-added step. It's a necessary step. To give a clean part, get good surface to bond to get performance. But in its own, it doesn't value add. The end consumer isn't paying more for that step. So from the customer's perspective, they're always, that's the first place you're looking, trying to drive cost out of the business. So, we're looking at it how to be a better partner. Then it's also a good steward for the environment. Putting stuff, you got to dispose of it when you're done with it down the drain. Well, we're committed to doing our best to help the environment. So to meet the customer needs, do the right things, is we're bringing technologies or even just auditing processes to find waste. Every process has waste. And that is something that, we have the knowledge, the experience to uncover and give alternatives to it. I think what it will do, and we are trying to do it, it will, though, in the future, where today, or looking backwards, your chemical supplier was selling a good price, was all rolled into that pound or drum that you were buying. As we reduce the volume, we'll have to unbundle some of the services that maybe were rolled up in that in the past. Where if we get real efficient, well, what you're paying us is insurance to keep your process running and helping you continually exceed your requirements.
Right. One of the things I see, and I've heard in talking to some of the people at Hubbard-Hall that have been out in the field, and actually some finishers as well that talk about it, is just prescribing a certain chemical to a situation isn't necessarily solving the problem. I mean, usually it seems like there's maybe a problem upstream that the applicator might have to take a look at, which I think is what you all do a very good job at, is taking a look at something and saying, you may not need that step. If we make a change here, you could go upstream and change a couple things, remove a chemical, remove a process sometimes, which really at the end benefits the applicator, the job shop, the finishing operation, correct? Because they've got less steps and they're spending less money, really.
From the, removing of steps, where a pre-cleaning operation may take 3 steps, or, we have processes in many cases that could take it down to 1, it reduces the chemicals needed. It saves on time, saves on rinse water that's going to your waste treatment. And then, as you mentioned, kind of going backwards in a process, this overall focus by Hubbard-Hall to help our customers reduce their chemical need. So very often our wastewater team is brought into a wastewater plant where they have a problem they're meeting their discharge limits. And instead of, giving them the right recipe of wastewater chemistries to solve it, our team will actually identify, you could make this change upstream, so you're not sending the contaminant downstream. And we do have, processes to remove some of these contaminants upstream to then again reduce your chemical need, liability, and so on.
Right. It seems like it's more of a holistic look at how a system is in place. And a lot of it, some of them I'm sure have been there for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, nothing's changed, right? And they've been doing it the same way. And it's, I know a lot of the people are averse to change, but really getting a new set of eyes on it, like I said, someone from your technical team that can come in and kind of do the audit, right? And look at from beginning to end and see where savings can be made, where efficiencies can be improved. It seems like that should be the key of where a lot of shops should be investing their time, right, with suppliers such as
You
yourself.
know, and that's also an answer to the question you asked me a little earlier on what can we be doing to help control costs or pricing.
Mm-hmm.
You said a great example there, how nothing appears to be broke. We're doing it the same way we've done it for 15 years and everything's working fine. But inviting a supplier in, to audit and look for inefficiencies. Things have changed, like where I mentioned we could eliminate steps and drive cost out. That's a kind of a freebie to reach out to Hubbard-Hall and let us come in and see if there is something there we could do for you. And then there's, I'll share with you 2 initiatives that we've been really over the past 12 months that kind of been demonstrating this. We have a Aqueous Infinity process, which uses sintered stainless steel membranes to filter out oils out of aqueous cleaners. And this technology, partnering it with the right chemistry, we're able to recover over 90% of the cleaner when they would typically dump it to waste treatment. And it allows you to run your concentration in the bath at a lower concentration to give you the effective level of cleanliness you need. And overall, the customer could achieve 50% reduction in chemical use. So you go back to a tight supply chain. Well, you lower your risk if you don't need as much material day to day, and you could use technology to help extend it. And for that theme, we've also done in the past year on the cleaning side of the business, we also supply both aqueous and solvent cleaning chemistries. And that is a unique, not most competitors, either one or other. Hubbard-Hall, has the expertise to bring whatever you need to your business. But this past year, late last fall, one of the largest trichloroethylene producers shut down their facility, essentially taking 50% out of the market. So it put a significant tightness. But what we were able to do is some accounts able to train them on how to analyze their baths, how to stabilize their baths, so it lasts longer. It doesn't have to be dumped, so you don't need the same supply that you've used in the past. So we do teach and give our customers ways to, again, extend both aqueous and solvent cleaning to, minimize that supply chain risk.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because I've worked on a few stories lately about where you all had done that, where people were dumping very frequently, and I know it's a huge operation to shut things down. Either bring people in on weekends, do the dumping, and bring it back in and get the lines where, they could get 4 and 5 times the lifespan of it by not having to dump and make those changes. And again, like you said, it doesn't seem like it's internally that they're figuring this out. It seems like when you put a fresh set of eyes on a problem or a process, somebody from the outside, like I said, someone from you all's team, audit team, I think it immediately gives back great dividends because they see things, right? And they see things that could probably help that owner operator probably would not have been aware of. And I think that's the key to a lot of that, where they do save money, they do save time, and certainly their efficiencies go up tremendously.
Well, Tim, it's what a lot of customers don't realize or don't think about. They're thinking about the actual purchase of the chemical, let's say, but what is the total cost of the process? So you think in the current supply situation, if you don't have the material need on the floor and you have to shut down that process, how many people are you paying for either to sit there or go home? It could be many multiples of the spend of the chemistry. So, it's a good insurance policy to look at this, but then also, just productivity. So again, it's not chemical spend or usage. We've gone into some customers in the past year because demand in the market is up, and they would just say, if I could only had another line, I could print money, by able to take in more work. But you find that maybe a line is down periodically for a couple of days for maintenance. Well, if we could eliminate that cause for maintenance, now you could go out and take in more work on the same piece of equipment you have, and bottom line will benefit from it. So that's another type of conversation that we'll have through a process audit.
Right. How long do those usually last? I mean, it seems like you have a team that kind of goes in and a couple of people look at things, and then you probably go back and do some things. But
in most cases, it may be just a morning of observing and walking through and talking and then coming back, because a lot of it can be done. You need to see the process, but depending on the complexity, a lot of it could also through discovery, just talking about the needs and why you do things. So there's cascading conversations that go with it, that uncover where the best payback is. Gotcha.
All right, so let's just recap a few things about as we get ready to sum this up. So really, with supply chain, one of the things you were talking about is communicate with the shop need to communicate with their supplier, let them know what they're going to be expecting, where their business is going to be growing. So that you can start getting things lined up to make sure they have the proper supplies getting them to them. So communication is key in that. You also mentioned that with near-term pricing and such, prices are going to get up a little bit. But getting back to what we were talking about with less chemistry, it might be a good time for companies to maybe talk to you all to come in and say, let's take a look at our system. Do we really need to be spending as much on chemistry? Can we eliminate? Can we right? I mean, that's what we're talking about, is take a fresh look at it, which I'm sure a lot of shops haven't done in years or decades with that. But then really, like you said, look for better efficiencies. Look where it all can. It's almost like the unknown. A lot of people don't know how they can improve unless somebody, can kind of point it out to them with that.
Exactly. It's just like your local, electric company giving the free energy audit for the house.
Yes. It's painful, but at that point, it's also pretty much going to save you some money somewhere, and then besides savings, it's going to make you more efficient, and especially with shops having a tough time hiring people, getting people to stick around. If you can't hire that second shift, then you better optimize what you're doing on the first shift, right? You better get it all down with that. So, well, great. Well, listen, this has been a lot of great information. And like I said, people can, who want to maybe possibly talk to you about doing an audit or looking at their chemistry use, you can go to Hubbard-Hall.com and visit you all. But Scott, thanks for taking the time to talk with us, and we will do this again, I'm sure.
Thank you, Tim. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Seen and Solved is brought to you by Hubbard-Hall. Better results, less chemistry. For more podcasts, go to Hubbard-Hall.com or wherever you get your podcasts.